Welcome to Writing with Hope, staying motivated when the world is on fire. I'm your host, Diana Gunn, and I'm very excited to have you all here for this deep dive today. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. First off, this event is run by the Weeknight Writers group, a social enterprise dedicated to creating affordable and accessible community and educational supports for authors. If you want to learn more about us, check out weeknightwriters.com. We do a lot of cool things, including our upcoming First Draft Fall event, which is our answer to the now dead NaNoWriMo, where it is everyone writes a first draft of something. You get to choose what it is and how long it is during the months of November and the first couple weeks of December. So do check it out, and especially check out our Ko-fi, where we have a paid membership program that allows us to continue creating these events for affordable prices, and in the case of First Draft Fall, provide a lot of free content. I also want to take a second to thank Renaissance Press for allowing us to use their Zoom, which provides live captions so we can make this panel more accessible. They are a small Canadian press devoted to publishing diverse voices, and they've got some great books in their catalog that you should definitely check out. You'll find links in the chat. And the final bit of housekeeping is that to protect our panelists, we only allow panelists to stream video and audio. So if you have questions, there will be time for live audience questions in the second half of this panel, and you can ask them in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on that. Please just make sure that your post starts with question in capital letters so that I can see it and differentiate it from other chat posts. All right, that is all of our housekeeping. So let's get into it. To get started, oh God, where did the window go? It's that kind of day, everyone.
Yep.
So to get started, what is your name? What are your pronouns? And why did you want to participate in this conversation about writing with hope specifically? And let's start with Jordan.
Hello, my name is Jordan Corella. My pronouns are he, him, and I wanted to participate in this panel discussion because hope is necessary in a world built on fear. And that's it for me.
Well said. Kara?
Yes, hi, I'm Cara Buchanan. My pronouns are she, her, and I wanted to participate in this because, likewise, I believe that holding on to hope in times like these is very important, and I basically dedicated all of my work to a hopeful message, so it seemed like a good deal. So,
Yeah, fun fact, when I had the idea for this panel, you were literally the first person I thought of inviting.
thank you very much.
Stephen.
I am Stephen Graham King. My pronouns are he, him, or they, them. As to why, um, I have found lately, and completely without my consent, I have ended up being a queer elder, and find that I've been through periods where hope was necessary and where we maybe didn't think hope could be found. And so, by sheer uh, dint of having been around a while, I'm hoping that something that I have in here might be useful. And on a purely selfish note, I've been struggling with it, so I'm hoping that talking through things that I think, but maybe I'm not able to do, and hear what other people are doing, that I can benefit from it as much as I may be able to benefit someone else.
I love that. I think it's really awesome when panelists can learn from each other, not just, teach the audience, but we all have so much to share with each other. And I'm sorry that you've become a queer elder. I think it kind of just happens by default.
Cursed linear time.
I mean, the other choice is being dead, so I think it's still your better choice.
There is that. Yes, there is that.
Time waits for no one. As much as I wish it would just pause so that I could like spend 3 weeks reading books and not have 3 weeks have actually passed. And by 3 weeks I mean like 3 years. My TBR is so long, guys.
Yeah, same.
Likewise, as a queer elder, it's just a side effect of having birthdays.
Hmm.
Yeah. And they just keep happening every
I know,
year,
right?
like clockwork.
It's just the side effect of having cake. I mean, what can you do?
Hey, I don't have a birthday every time I have cake.
Well, you could,
That sounds like a lot of. If I had a birthday every time I had cake, I'd probably be like 300 now.
and then you'd be immortal.
Honestly, with the way the world is going, I'm not sure I like that idea.
I mean, it's like a very wise man once said, the years start coming and they just don't stop, you know. So
Indeed. All right, so we've got some great questions today, and I thought I would start off with an easy one and kind of work our way into the big, more complicated questions. And so this is a community question from one of our paid members who's chosen to stay anonymous, and it is, what are some small things that you've noticed bring you hope in day-to-day life? We'll start with Kara this time.
honestly, like a lot of the way I hold on to like hope in real life is to get offline. Um, the the feed is not always great these days, and it's my experience that like the more in-person like interactions I have with people in the community, the more like I feel like that hope returning to me after it's been drained by looking at the timeline. So just trying to connect with like local queer people and fans and that sort of thing has really made a big difference as far as like just realizing that like you know for all of the bad, there is still a lot of really good things happening in life if you just get outside and look for them, and that's helped me a whole lot in the last God, I mean the last year especially, but really the last several years. So that's been my like number one thing, I think.
Awesome. Jordan?
Uh, so I was a therapist for about 10 years. And one of the things that I did, I worked with traumatized youth and traumatized adults. And one of the things we did a lot was push coping mechanisms, coping mechanisms, coping mechanisms. And it was something that I learned that I had to do for myself was get coping mechanisms, especially in a world that is traumatized by COVID, by the fire hose of fear, by all this other stuff. So I put into place coping mechanisms for myself. And one of them is one, to get outside. I like to exercise outside. Community building. I built a lot of community in my community. I'm also a gamer. The headset might have given it away. I like to game with my friends. But also writing itself is something that I like to do because when I'm writing, I get to create the world. I get to put myself in the world that I create, and it gets me out of the world that I'm in. Even though I write a lot of contemporary fantasy that mirrors or mimics this world, it's still my character's problems to deal with, and I can make it kinder for them than it is currently. Reading books, like I have to read a physical book because I don't, screens are not my friend all the time. So reading books also, that imagining, whether it's a horror book or a fantasy book or whatever genre. Also, I'm a very active reader, so that that more than television or movies is a way that creates that anything that gets me out of this current situation and makes my imagination go or builds community or gets me out of or into the physical world and builds community is a way to do a coping mechanism or get out of the fire hose of fear, just get out of that line of trajectory.
Yeah, I love that, and especially the immersing yourself in other worlds through, reading or gaming, I find very helpful for that. And because the other thing is, even in a horror, the nice thing about that is you generally know who the bad guy is, and in real life it's a lot harder to tell that. And even just having that black and white line, even if it turns out to be a tragedy and the bad guy wins, just knowing where everyone stands and who the bad guy actually is so nice. And as much as I love grimdark and like morally complicated protagonists, sometimes that black and white, very clear cut is just such a beautiful cathartic thing.
Because the book ends, right? The horror at the book ends, and then you can put it away and it's done. And then you can travel on to something, another thing, like whether it's the community building or the gaming or the writing. Yeah.
Exactly. Steven?
I was actually reminded just this morning of that quote from Mr. Rogers about when something terrible happens, look for the helpers. So when I see the awful thing, my immediate reaction is, okay, what are people doing? What's the response? What actions are people taking against this thing? Uh, the last few days I've been taking so much joy in the Disney Plus thing with people canceling their subscriptions and doing all this and reading all the stories about how internally Disney is falling apart because all the employees are upset and all of that. So that's a big thing is looking for not the thing, but what are people doing about the thing is a big one. I read a ton too. I started in the pandemic because I was watching TV so much that at 9 o'clock at night, my TV went off and I read for 2 hours before I went to bed. And I'm still doing that. So, as many different things as I can read, um, sweet, gentle TV shows, Great British Bake Off, Great British Sewing Bee. Like the British know how to do competition shows where you never you watch an American version and people are like, I will win and I will take down anybody in my way. Whereas the British ones, they're all helping each other and they're all being nice and they all love each other so much. And it's like, I will take that. Give me as much of that as you can. So looking for things that show what people can be and what we can be in response when terrible things happen or when things go wrong is a big one for me.
I love that. I think especially the looking for the helpers, because it's not helpful to bury your head in the sand and be completely unaware of things, but if you really focus your awareness on a way that like you see the response to things and you see, the people who are fighting to make it better, it really does help a lot, and that's something that I've found for myself as well. And I do want to throw my own in here, and I will say something that makes me really feel a lot of hope and joy is honestly, uh, not to be sappy or sound like I'm trying to sell you something, but the Weeknight Writers community and seeing the incredible group of queer authors that we have and queer writers who are still writing every week in the face of all of this, still putting out incredible queer books, and you three, and just knowing that there are so many people still doing the work, still fighting the good fight, still putting out these stories no matter what the world thinks, it really does help me feel better about, the possibility of a future. And that's really powerful. And I don't think we honor enough how much it means just to know that someone is creating.
Mhm.
All right, so now we're gonna get into the big questions. So how do we write with hope when it seems fragile, pointless, or even naive? Like, how do you reconnect with the purpose of joy in writing to push back against narratives of despair without dismissing the very real horrors of our reality and negative emotions that many of us feel about today. Jordan, you want to go first this time?
Okay, so this is something I've been talking about since I started writing. There is an RPG book. I think it's out of print. I'm not sure if it's out of print, and I should probably check this. Dread, the RPG book, talks about all narratives, including horror, have to have hope in it. Horror without hope is not a story. So it is just terrible things happening all the time, which is whatever. So I'm not going to get into that. But so basically, in creating story, in writing, it is an act of hope. I have it written down here because I wrote down stuff. Sorry, so I'm going to look down. So the act of writing itself is an act of hope and aspiration. It is an act of itself putting something down on paper or on a Word document or into the world and hoping that someone will read it, hoping that you will finish it, hoping that the characters will do the thing that you want them to do, because sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're just like, I'm going to go do this other thing. And you're like, please do not do that. So writing itself is an act of hope. And whether you write, I write mainly darker fiction, but it always ends well. It usually ends well because I don't like to have my babies do something horrible. But when they do something horrible, I do like to have, I do believe that all gendered people, all ethnicity people, all combinations of race and gender and ethnicity should be able, voting Izzy Wasserstein here, should be able to create their Walter White of a mess. I believe that the Walter Whites should belong to only white men and a particular kind of white men. So anyway, and writing itself is an act of hope, is an act of creation, and hope itself and creation is itself hopeful. And that's my whole answer, basically.
I like it. Stephen, anything to add?
I actually have a quote too, and this came to me this morning, so forgive me while I look down at my phone. People speak of hope as if it is this delicate, ephemeral thing made of whispers and spider webs. It's not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, the grit of the cobblestones in her hair, and just spat out a tooth as she rises for more, or rises for another go. And I think that that's a big thing in terms of hope is something you do. It is not a state that you are in, that it is active, that is something that you need to decide. And I think back to how for the better part of the 20th century, queer people could not be portrayed in movies at all. And you move from there to, I think of the books that I read. Picture it, Saskatoon, mid-1980s, don't even have a gay bookstore, but the bookstore that we have has every so often a queer book mixed in with the fiction. And if you know what to look for, you might see it and be able to pick it out. And one of the first things that I picked out was this book, and it was a couple, and one of the men was an alcoholic and their relationship was falling apart. But that wasn't enough, because the alcoholic's father was an alcoholic and also in a relationship that was falling apart. And then halfway through the book, the father, while drunk, falls under a bus and dies, which ruins that. And it was like, looking back on it, I can think, what on earth, did I find in that? But at the time, that was, there are men out there who are attracted to other men and who love them and who desire them, and they exist, you know? And so when you look at being in, not being able to be portrayed at all, and then only being portrayed badly for a very long time, and finally seeing yourself, but only seeing, so negative portrayals, to the breadth of queer literature and film and music have now, that if you're not necessarily in touch with all of that time when we couldn't tell our stories, I think it's easy to forget how important all of our stories are, whatever they are. Good, bad, indifferent, complicated, simple, heroic, whatever. And that's the thing I try to focus on, is that I'm telling silly space stories and heroes, and the world is ending, and the heroes save the day, and it's fun and quippy, but letting us be heroes is important as well. So I think, remember how important it is that you tell your story, whatever your story is, and hold on to all that's come before, and remember how, like I said, how significant it is that you're doing what you do, whatever that is.
Well said. And it's funny that quote that you started with has actually come up several times in the conversations that me and Jade were having when we were building up to this panel, because yeah, hope is active. I mean, most of the things we consider passive emotional states, they can be, but they don't have to be, and in fact are often better when they're not. You choose joy. And sometimes, yeah, you choose rage because there's a lot to be angry about. But like while we cannot ever fully control our emotions, there is a lot we can do to choose how we feel, and to choose to focus on a specific facet of how we feel. When we're having multiple big complex emotions, we can pick one out to focus on, and the others are still there, but that gives us, uh a focal point to build
Yeah,
on
yeah,
and move forward with.
yeah. So what you do, like the feelings can be complicated, and you don't always have responsibility for what they are and where they come from. But what do you do with that? What when it comes? Does it make you fall apart? Does it spur you to action? Do those are the things, and then it's all kind of a complex kind of mix in terms of that.
Yeah, Kara, your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously, I definitely this resonates with me considering what I write. Like I've always heard that, like, the perspective people have of like hope is naive or whatever, and it makes me think of that Ursula K. Le Guin quote about how people have decided that only pain is intellectual and only evil is interesting. And I, for me, it was a thing of like, I wanted to Stephen's point, talking about, finding the helpers, right? Like I wanted to write about the helpers, right? And I wanted to find a way to connect my own experience with being trans and queerness and everything to a genre about people helping people, and also a genre too. One of the things I've enjoyed writing in my magical girl genre is that, like, a lot of the more respectable magical girl things of the last several years are the grim dark ones, right? Like it's like, oh, they didn't do the silly naive hope thing. They made it like dark and edgy. And I didn't want to do that. I just really I don't I think that's just I just think that's boring. And so, like, I wanted to show a world where, like, queer people are queer in the world, like they have to deal with things that all of us have to deal with, but they will always choose to help each other and help other people in a setting where they are allowed to be themselves without like, a constant oppression and everything, right? And so like I to me, like the way I connect to that is that like I'm this is also kind of a thing with like one of my other big influences besides this genre is obviously like Star Trek, right? And Star Trek has always been a series at its when it's at its best that imagines, a hopeful future, even considering all of the horrible things that have happened and will happen. And so I wanted to present something that was like, here is a world where we've gotten through a lot of this stuff and queer people get to be celebrated and be themselves and help each other and help other people. And that is what makes me like, that's really what drives me is just this ability to like showcase what I want for us, when we are celebrated for who we are, right? And allowed to be all of ourselves. We don't have to hide things away anymore. And so that's why I wanted to write in this genre is because I thought it would be an interesting way to connect that to another kind of coming out, like awakening as a magical girl, right? And so that, you know, I found that like um, just going all in on it, I connect to uh, hope because I wouldn't. I don't know how to put it exactly, but like this is, it is. It's very important to me to always like keep that as the bedrock of what I do. Like if I wasn't hopeful, I don't know if I'd be able to write these stories. Like um, so that's I made it a core of what I want to do with writing, and keeping putting one foot in front of the other is something that I have to do, and it's something my characters have to do, and so like that's just how it keeps me motivated. Like the hope that drives the story is also what drives me. So,
I love that. And yeah, I think that the idea of hope being naive comes out of, I think it's partially backlash against a lot of the like really cheesy stories that we had, in like the 80s and 90s that had no complexity. But you can have deeply complex and nuanced stories that still have a core of hope, and I love to see more of that emerging.
I
And
think it's also, sorry if I
oh,
can
go
just,
ahead.
I think it's also misogyny. I think hope is seen as a feminine emotion. And so long in science fiction and fantasy, um, it was seen as like, oh, but that's so, I'm just going to say twee and feminine, and feminine stories aren't important, and stories written by women aren't important. So hope is just, bleh, we don't like those. And, so men write important stories of pain and despair. And so, but the thing is, hope has to be just as strong as the pain and despair. It has to actually be stronger. And this is something I was trying to like dovetail off Kara and Stephen. Hope has to be just as strong as the pain, despair, and fear you feel. Otherwise, it can't lift as heavy. I wrote a story about called "The Messengers of Despair" in Beneath the Skies, about hope being a literal house that consumes despair. Spoiler. But basically, like she's, but that's the feeling that I have is that hope was considered a feminine femme emotion. And that's why it's not considered so important in the literary genre zeitgeist.
Absolutely. That's actually quite similar to what I was going to say, which is that
Sorry.
the idea of, hope being naive and those stories being silly, to me is very reminiscent of how our society has branded emotions as bad and rebranded anger as somehow not actually an emotion and not.
yeah, exactly. And how, uh, people who are angry, that's okay. That's not a silly, frivolous emotion. But also that we've now also decided apparently empathy is bad,
Yeah,
as a
ah,
society.
it's so gross.
Yeah.
So gross.
Yeah. So, we've already kind of touched on the next question, but I'd love to get a little more specific about how your writing imagines a better future for things like disability access and queer acceptance, and how it encourages readers to move toward that future. Stephen, if you want to start on this one.
I piggybacking off what Kara said, Star Trek was huge influence when I was little. I remember being 3 years old and watching it first run with my sisters, not understanding very much of it, but falling in love with it, and then coming back to it in syndication. So the love of space opera came very early and came hard and really imprinted. So my stories are far future thing. We've expanded, things have gotten better, we've built on this. So wrote stories, and there were times when either someone outside of me or me myself would have to sort of stop and question my first assumption when I wrote. Um, I had originally written the very first draft of the first book in the Maverick Heart series almost 40 years ago, and had a weird, like, homophobic father of one of the characters. And Candace Dorsey, who's a writer here in Canada, looked at it for me through her press when I submitted. And she looked at me and basically went, "Really? We've gone to space and we're still doing that?" And I was just like, I have no way to rebut that. So, okay. And from then on, you know, whatever happens, queer is not the problem. People can be greedy, people can be venal, people can be selfish, but the queerness is never an issue. So it's like, okay, freedom. So then reimagining characters' identities. And the same thing kind of happened with disability. Uh, I did a really awful thing to one of the characters at the end of the third book, and then wrote the fourth book as if medical technology, everything is fine. And it was only then that I sort of looked back at it and thought, well, no, maybe it's more interesting if it's not a magical cure narrative. What if it's an amazing thing that saved him, but there's still issues? And that immediately made the story more interesting and made the world more interesting. There was there's a technology in the books which is sort of like a cell phone, a smartphone in your brain. And I realized that a really cool use of that would be translation. So I had a character with this technology talking to someone who was deaf who used sign. And the tech basically translated that across the vision. And it's like, oh, cool, inclusive tech. Here's a person who does not represent someone who's able-bodied. I got to the most recent book and thought, well, wait a minute. I wanted to make a character with a high-tech assistive power chair that basically had little, robotic manipulator things on it, and made that have absolutely nothing to do with how the character fits in the story. They play their part, they help resolve the problem, and things happen, and they deal with them in their own way. And so it's this sort of constant, okay, I have a character. My assumption, maybe my first impulse is able-bodied, cisgender, whatever, and go, well, no. What if this character isn't? What if this character is different? And that's been a fun challenge of sort of going, okay, no, you have a first impulse, hold on. how do we turn that? How do we turn it on its side? How do we upend it? How do we look at this in a new way and just expand and make this world more reflective of the world that we exist in? And build on all of the tropes that I fell in love with when I was younger and when I was discovering science fiction and falling in love with futurism and all of that, and just pulling that out to make it to address some of the things that I didn't see when I was reading it all when I was young. So it's like, oh, I haven't seen this. Okay, I'm going to do it then. So, and getting to just play in a future and imagine it. And I think futures and science fiction are inherently hopeful because the one of the things I love about SF is it's all built on the assumption that whatever that future is, we made that. We made the tech. We imagined the things that it can do. We imagined these new societies. We imagined all of those things and then made them happen. And that's the thing that I think I love the most about it, and how I try to pull all of those things into what I'm doing. He
Yeah, I
says,
love that.
rambling on a little bit.
That's all right. It was a very enjoyable ramble, and I
Okay,
love
good.
that. And I love the thing is, if these fictional people can imagine these better, more interesting, more advanced worlds technologically and otherwise, that gives us room to believe that we could too.
Yes.
And I think that is the really powerful thing about sci-fi. Kara, your thoughts?
Yeah, so like this is one of the things that I've loved working on my books, right? Is that like the genre, like I've spoken about my own, love of Star Trek and how that inspired me, but coming to like magical girls, which is what I write about now. Um, Obviously, like a lot of trans women have a fondness for magical girl stories because you have that experience of, you being able to manifest yourself as like the ultimate form of yourself, right? And so when I started working on this, I was like, I want to take that, like it's a kind of a wish fulfillment thing, but also not like shy away from the reality, right? Like, so my protagonist, I'm a late bloomer. I didn't get to come out until my 30s because of like where I lived and the culture I grew up in and everything, right? And so I let her come out in her 20s. She's got a little bit of a head start on me, but the thing about the way it works in my universe is that like she's not magically transformed into a perfect, like as if she'd been a girl the whole time. It is like turbocharged HRT, right? Like she still goes through everything that all of us in real life go through. She just does it quicker, right? So the setting is such that like she is explicitly a trans woman. And so this community, this organization that the Magical Girls work for is kind of my aspect of a wish fulfillment thing because it is a like just radically accepting or group, right? Like nobody even bats an eye. She's not even the only trans girl on the team. Nobody thinks anything is strange about this or anything like that. And it is built around my experiences when I moved across the country to a very accepting place, met a community that let me feel safe enough to come out. And so this is my reflection of that. This is like my as much as it is a wish fulfillment, it's a wish fulfillment of a community where everyone is radically accepted, and like we meet some interesting characters through these books, some just very unusual, like we have the computer hacker who speaks without punctuation in a monotone and completely dresses completely like agender and everything, and is one of the more like interesting people that we meet, and they are also just nobody even blinks an eye at them. Like they're just, yeah, you're cool. Come on, help us out. And so that kind of just radical acceptance is how I've connected to like this future, because it's not a future, it's set in the present day, right? But like I wanted to imagine a world that we could work toward where like, yeah, you're cool. Let's hang out. Let's go save the world. We got some work to do, you know. Um, Nobody cares that, you know, not that nobody cares. Obviously people care, but like nobody is going to be othering you because of where you came from, right? And that's kind of how I approach queerness, how I approach disability, how I approach mental health in these books, you know. And I just that's my that's my better future that I want, you know. I just want people to be able to live and be happy. And that's, you know, the whole point of the story is that, you know, once you're able to be truly yourself and truly happy, you can achieve all these amazing things, right? And that's kind of how I engage with, even though I'm not, you know, writing a futuristic story, that's how I engage with the idea of like, this is the goal, right? This is where we want to move toward. And so the real world problems are still out there. And like Claire does have a couple of bouts of like she has to deal with someone misgendering her a couple of times, and she still experiences voice dysphoria, you know, that sort of thing. But like uh, imagining a world where like you can even if you're struggling with some things like that, you have the people around you who are never going to let go of you, you know, that they're going to help you through all of it, and you're just part of the group, you know. And that's kind of where I place my work, is just imagining this future of just unquestionable acceptance, you know. Just everyone is welcome, everyone's cool, and let's go do something amazing, you know. So that's kind of how I view my place in my work there.
That's beautiful, and I hope we can eventually reach a day where everyone can be in a community that welcoming.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Love
like,
it.
you know, it's the thing where like, yeah, even if the world outside can be kind of terrible sometimes, you will always have a place where you're safe, basically, because of the people that you've met and the people that you know and the people who support you.
Yeah, and having that kind of community really does make all the difference in the world when dealing with honestly everything life throws at us. Jordan.
So, as a trans man who also transitioned very late, I was in a marriage where I was not allowed to um, express gender appropriately. I was also told that I was straight in that marriage, which I was not. When I came out as bisexual, that was not okay. The marriage started falling apart when I came out as bisexual. When I started saying I was not binary, the marriage really started falling apart, but I was not non binary. I'm a trans man. I only started taking HRT about 3 years ago. Um, anyway, so a lot of my writing about trans masculinity is about that. And also, I have a lot of trauma from spending over 40 years in a femme body, from sexual assault, domestic violence, you know, all that stuff that happens when you're an attractive femme person in a femme body and you don't have appropriate boundaries because you weren't taught them. Anyway, so a lot of my writing about trans masculinity is about finding how to be a man when you weren't taught how to be a man, or when you were prevented from being a man and nobody's teaching you how to be a man because you were shunted out of most of your community, because a lot of trans men are left alone. Um, the cis gay men community won't accept them. A lot of trans men are just left totally alone, and we are expected to often just find our way a lot of the time, mainly because we stealth. We don't. We often look exactly like men, and we don't know how to man a lot of the time. We can often be just left alone. So a lot of my writing is about being alone and finding our way and how to present as men. So, but there is a lot of hope in that, because a lot of it has to do with trauma. A lot of it has to do with that. So I wrote a story in Apex about a trans man who's a pirate, who basically collects basically watches other men be men, and he collects those pieces. Like that, he basically says, "I like how this guy does this. I like how this guy does this. I like how this guy does this," and he basically collects these pieces of how other people do this. But at the meantime, there's a sea monster who comes up the very beginning, who's the feminine aspects of all how he used to be, who's telling him, "You don't have to abandon this. You can still be soft. You can still be this. You can still be that." And then I echoed this in Evan a Remainder, which was nominated for the Nebula I Lost and is currently nominated for the Theodore Sturgeon Award. But I don't know about that one. It's about a trans man who recently got divorced, and his husband was like, "I don't love you because I'm not gay." So he's living in this haunted duplex, and he starts coughing up bones out of his face, and he ends up coughing up an entire skeleton. Anyway, so the story basically is about, it's not just about transness, but it's about basically we think we've left behind and buried, because he buries the skeleton. He dates another guy and he buries the skeleton. And we think we have to bury all the things about us that we leave behind in changing that we don't think are appropriate. But the skeleton ends up embodying all these feminine things, these femme-coded things that we think aren't appropriate. But Evan actually likes, that he actually thought were cool and good, but he thinks as a man left alone in the world that he couldn't take on. But he actually could. So anyway, but in Death of Mountains, which is this book, which is a novella about Death of Mountains, comes from a Middling Hill in the Appalachians who doesn't want to die, and like a Scheherazade pastiche, they trade story for a story to stave off on the inevitable. Is a climate change story about hope and the inevitability of permanence and how permanence is a lie. But a lot of my disability, I am disabled, a lot of my disability advocacy goes for PTSD and understanding neurodivergence and understanding neurodivergence that comes with CPTSD. But this book comes along with sort of like, I didn't mean to write a book that breaks people's brains, but like it's like this big. The book is like this, like literally like this big. But everybody who's read it says, "Oh, I'm going to finish it tonight," and it takes them 3 weeks because apparently it's so dense. It's kind of like one of those cupcakes that you eat that's like this big, but like you have to take like an hour to get through it because it's just so thick, right? So like, but basically they apparently, I'm reading it on Wednesday night with 2 Hour Transport, but it's one of those stories where the mountain just keeps on talking about how there is, with pain, there is joy, and with life, there is pain and joy. And the Death of Mountains is terrible at its job. There's a third point of view, which I don't want to spoil, but I'll just give you a hint. On mountains, there are people. So the deaths are kind of inspired by Mort, by Terry Pratchett. There are deaths of animals, deaths of stars, deaths of this. So yeah, so like yeah, deaths of trees. But I love this book. Other people love this book, but it's basically like it's one of those philosophical books I didn't know that I wrote, and then everyone goes, "Wow," and I'm just like, I didn't mean to do that. But the idea of permanence being something that people put on something. A monument is something that people put on something, and they put all their hope on something like a mountain. But a mountain is still something that people destroy in order to have hope with it. Because they're like, "Oh, we're going to put this monument on this mountain." And the mountain's like, "Please stop. I didn't ask for this." So, but that's how sort of like, but this story it's inevitably hopeful. And my becoming trans was inevitably hopeful. Just like Kara said, it's inevitably hopeful. It's my final form, right? To make it a meme. No matter how many people say you can't do this, I'm going to freaking do it anyway, because this is my final form. This is who I'm meant to be, and nobody can stop me.
Damn right. I love it. And for any longtime Weeknight Writers fans who have like a panel bingo card, you can now cross off Terry Pratchett reference, and it wasn't even me this time. But I definitely, I mean, that sounds incredible. And I also think that it was almost inevitable for Pratchett to come up in a conversation like this because it's so true that in his work there is a lot of that, that hope and that commentary. And I think in the early books you can tell that a lot of it is semi-intentional, but then the later you go, the more you're like, no, no, this is intentional biting commentary. But there is always, the hope and the silliness that so defined Pratchett. And really just a genius. Yeah, so we have a couple more moderator questions that are already written out, and we will have some time for audience questions. So if folks do have questions, please share them in the chat and just put question in caps at the beginning of your message so that I can pick it out from other messages in the chat. So now we're gonna get more into the practical day to day. What practices, habits, or other tools do you use to balance surviving with everything going on and actually like making writing happen? How do you find not just like the emotional resonance to write, but like the mental capacity, the time when all of us are so overwhelmed so often by reality? And Kara, I'll have you start this time.
Yeah, so when I'm actively writing on a project, like it is like my foundational thing that I always set for myself is like I set a daily goal, but I don't set one that's like super not too ambitious, right? Because I know how sometimes it's just everything's piling up, and you can't. I often find myself like I've learned over the years that like if I set my goal really ambitiously, then I just make myself feel worse if I don't get anywhere near it. So like I set a pretty reasonable goal, like 500 words a day when I'm working on a book, and like if I hit 500 words and I'm just not feeling it otherwise, then you know, fine, I did my thing, and I can go, curl up in bed or whatever I need to do to get through things. But like a lot of the times, the getting that 500 words out will like get the block out, get the bad thoughts from the real world out, and I'll find myself writing, 1,000, 1,500, whatever the case may be instead. So like from a writing, like just mechanically writing perspective, like that's my kind of my foundational thing is just like set a reasonable goal, like not one that's going to result in immediate burnout. So, and I kind of balance that with like, because like I said at the beginning, obviously the world is on fire all the time now, and we are living in interesting times, unfortunately, and uh, unplugging always helps me, like getting out, going for walks will always help clear my thoughts a little bit. Also, just having people to talk to, my best friend who's also my story editor, development editor, I will talk to her, regularly, not only sometimes about the story, sometimes just about the world, and, talk to my wife also, and we'll all hang out, at least a couple times a week just to remind ourselves that like there is good in the world despite what we may see on the internet. Um, and so that's, a lot of my day to day is that sort of thing. And also just, allowing myself the time. I've been obviously like keeping up my inspiration and the juice is flowing for as I move into writing more of these books. I've been rewatching or watching for the first time a lot of like Magical Girl anime that I didn't see, originally, or have not watched in a long time, so like engaging with art that is either relevant to what I do or was inspiring to me in the first place has helped a lot too. Um, just reminding myself that everyone has like there's been so much art made by people who have been going through some stuff, and reminding myself that like as often as it feels like everything we're experiencing now is singular, and it is quite bad. Don't get me wrong, but like, um, you know, we're not the first people who have made art in times of either societal upheaval or personal problems, personal upheaval. And just being able to remind myself that whatever else is going on, people can still create stuff, and that really helps me a lot. Just to remind myself that like you know as long as I've got breath in my lungs, I can still put words on a page, and that's kind of been a big thing for me, in this time. So yeah, just keeping myself inspired and keeping myself stable and grounded as things blow up. That's a big part of how I keep the motivation going to write, and also just knowing that like um, when I do get online, also engaging with like readers and fans, and like just knowing that people, like as soon as I got to the point where like I saw people had been reading the book and enjoying it and like had questions for me, or like I started seeing fan art and stuff like that, and I was just like, okay, like this means something to people who aren't me, and that kind of like knowing that people outside of my own head care about the girls and care about like the stories and everything, um, that helps kind of pull me along as well. Like I'm not writing just for I mean, I am writing primarily because I want to and because I want to write these stories, but also just knowing that there are at least some people out there in the world who are finding like I got my first like the other day my first someone decided to come out finally after reading the book, and like you know knowing that sort of thing is going on out there is like that's hopeful to me, and so like having that to fall back on helps a whole lot, knowing that like as I write there are people who are finding meaning in it, and so that helps me a ton just to know that people actually are caring and reading, and so yeah, I'm writing for them too. So
Yeah, that's amazing. And it really is, it's so heartwarming to know that people are reading and caring about your stories. And especially like the first time you find out someone you don't know has read your book and liked it is just like the greatest feeling. And like
oh, it's so much. Like it is so every time I like it still happens to me. Every time I get a message from somebody saying like I read this and I didn't know what to expect going in or whatever, if I was I thought like, oh, it's gonna be fun or frivolous or whatever, and then I was like, oh, I love this, and I'm just like that's fuel, that's the gas that goes in the tank that keeps, no matter what else is going on, like yeah, people this is meaningful to people, not just me, so like that's God, that is such a huge motivating factor.
yeah, and I think it's a great reminder to all of us to shout about the books and stories we love, because every creator thrives on that feeling of knowing that their creations are appreciated. And even if you think someone's too big of a creator to notice, unless they're, Stephen King famous, they're probably not too big to notice. They will probably see it. And I know a lot of writers even keep things like that in like a file to come back to when they're having really dark days. So like you shouting about the thing really does always mean the world to the people who make the thing.
That really is, because like I've one thing I've learned from like getting to talk to like authors who I always considered like way above my level, since I started doing this, is that like unless you're like you say, unless it's like a Stephen King level author or something like that, we're all just people making art, and like we all need to hear that sometimes. Like just being able to hear from people that they enjoyed something we did. Like I guarantee you, no matter how big you think somebody is, that still really helps them a lot.
Exactly. Jordan, you look very eager to jump in.
No, I was just totally 100% agreeing with everything that you said. Like I have friends that I thought were bigger deals than me, and I was just like, "Hey, I really like this." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I was having the worst day. You don't know how much that meant to me." And then they just start telling me about their day, and I was like, oh, I guess we're friends now. So, but, whatever. So, no, but to answer the question, sorry, I was just totally 100% agreeing. So I was just very enthusiastic. But to answer the question, I lost the question. Hold on just one second. I had these pulled up. What practices or tools? Okay, so basically, the big thing that I'm not a peer pressure guy. Like I'm not like a guy that goes, "Oh, you're gonna jump off the cliff." I'm gonna jump off the cliff first. So I'm not that kind of guy. But in writing, co-writing, I discovered when I went to a recent very large convention that I am an extrovert, which was hugely surprising to me. Like I was rudely awakened. I did not know I was an extrovert. And I got home and I was like mad about this. But anyway, so because I had energy, I had like the weirdest cold. I was just like raining snot out of my face. But I also had more energy than I had had in years. I was like, uh-oh. Anyway, but so I write better when I know there's other people writing with me. So I go to a writing thing. I'm going to be at a writing thing later today. So I have a queer writers group that I've been substitute running for about 5 months. And we have a Discord and everyone's like, can we do sprints? I'm like, yeah, let's do sprints. And so we do sprints there. I do a sprint with a newsletter that I go. Yeah, maybe I'll oscillate between it. Sorry. So the newsletter that I do sprints with. I have a friend that sometimes contacts me and says, "Do you want to do a sprint?" I get so much writing done that way. However, if I go, "Oh, I have to write," I love writing. My friends say that when they said, "I could tell you wrote today. You look so relaxed." So I know I love it. It's like one of those things that you love to do. You absolutely have a great time doing it, but I can't do it unless I make it social for some weird reason. So, because I'm an extrovert, even online, which has been a thing since the 90s, because I am a queer elder. So, as Stephen brought up, but so like that is something that really motivates me to write is writing with sprints online, even writing in person together, which is a thing that I like. In our queer writers group that meets in person, I can write 1,200 words in 30 minutes. I'm very fast. Don't try to be me. It's ridiculous. They're not good words, but at least they're in there. So like, but whatever. So that hobbies are important. Also, I read the news a lot. I read the news a lot because I had family members who were journalists, and having family members who were journalists is kind of like, did you read the news? It's like, okay, yes, I will read the news. And I'm 8, but yes, I will read the news. So, but you can't, I taught a class on burnout. And one of the things I did, and like burnout in terrible times. And what I did was I said, you have to titrate your news intake. You have to make like, you can look at the news so many hours a day or so many minutes a day, and you have to allow yourself time to look at it and only so many articles. And this is how I found out that Robert Redford had passed away in a really cursed post on Blue Sky. And then I had to look it up to fact check it because I was like, this can't be real. And so, but I found it out at like 9:30 at night that day because there's so much news going on. Anyway, community building, hobbies, and also my 2 best friends are not writers. They're not in publishing. They don't do anything like it, but they know everything at this point. Because if you have having friends within publishing who are writers is great. Having very close friends within publishing who are writers is terrific. But having friends who are outside who have a lot of your shared interests, that is really, I said this in a post on Blue Sky, has really saved my mental health because I can go, you know what so and so said that upset me? And they can say, that's not normal to be upset about that, Jordan. I know this. Just go for a walk. I'm like, okay. And so like, yeah, because they're outside of it and they know that they've heard so much about publishing that they know what is okay to be upset about and what is not. And I'm done.
Yeah, I love that. And also, I'm pretty sure I learned that Robert Redford was dead from that exact same cursed blue sky post at a similar time of night. Um, the joys we have on the internet. Uh, but yeah, I really do think that having friends who are outside of publishing is helpful, not just for that, but also because sometimes it's really hard to like see how much ass we are kicking because we're just surrounded by other people who are doing all the same things and who are, writing, these incredible stories, and we just feel like that's normal. And then, I talked to my best friend and she's like, it's so amazing that you wrote even one book. And I have to remind myself that that's how most people see it. Like, I'm just like, I'm always moving on to the next thing. And like, it's so hard for me to like celebrate the wins as being as big as they are. But
They're big wins. They're huge
exactly.
wins. It's cool that we get to do what we get to do. And like people outside of publishing, like, that is so cool. And we're like, but this guy over here did all this. It's like, stop comparing. There's a thing in hiking where you have to look at your own feet. Otherwise, you'll fall off the mountain.
Mm.
So if you don't look at your own feet, so it's cool that we're all here doing this thing that we get to do. And the problem is we're always looking at this other guy. It's like, stop, you'll fall off. So yeah.
Exactly. And having friends outside of publishing can really help you redirect out of that. And being able to redirect out of that is a huge part of being able to keep writing because you can get really lost in the sauce with the comparisonitis. Stephen, what strategies do you use to keep writing in spite of it all?
I second the idea of groups. I have in my time, I was part of a very small writing and critique group. Um, Critique groups are, I find you've got to have a lot of trust there because you have to be able to thread the needle of being honest but supportive at the same time. And that's a difficult thing to do, and I think a difficult relationship to find. Recently, I've been in one where it's literally just one night a week. We meet at a place, we eat something, and then we write for a while, and then we talk for a while, and then we write for a while. So nobody's responsible for anyone else's work. Nobody's responsible for critiquing. You're just committing to being in a place where you can work. Um, find the methods and the tools that work for you. There's always these people have rules, writing rules. You have to write every day, or you have to write X number of things. What works for you? What is the tool that works for you? Is it Scrivener? Is it Word? Is it Google Docs? Is it a pen and paper? Find what works for you. Uh, I have music. I write well to music, so I have a playlist which is all movie soundtracks, because movie soundtracks to my brain mean story and mean telling a story. So it doesn't have to match what I'm writing, but the music gets me in the mood of, this is a story, things are happening. And so I have this playlist, which is something like 50 hours long. So every time I turn it on, it's something different. Um, but yeah, you're gonna need to find your own rhythms and your own tools and your own timing, uh, because it's only ever going to be the thing that facilitates for you. Um, I have something else, and I think having something else is good too. Having another way to create. Uh, I take pictures. I've been doing black and white photography since just before the pandemic. Um, I have in my time been utterly terrible at it, but it's something that I feel myself getting better at, and it stretches a whole different set of muscles in terms of making something and telling a story in a different way. Um, so find something else: art, knitting, crochet, macrame, if anyone in the world still does macrame that isn't in their 60s. Something that allows you to do something, to create in a way so that you don't feel like everything is riding on this thing that you may have trouble doing at this point in time. Pictures, I just throw my camera over my shoulder whenever I leave the house, and will randomly just, things and people. And side note, I took my first portraits of a friend last week, and they're amazing. They turned out so well, and I'm so proud of them, and I want to do more. But there's someone also described this to me once, reflecting back on what Jordan was saying. He described it to me as, wherever you are, for everybody that you look at and say they've done more, they've achieved more, they've accomplished more, there's someone on the other side of you looking at you and saying that about you. Wow, I wish I'd done what they. Wow, they've done so much. And try not to just look in that one direction of, oh, I wish I had that. Because if you turn around, there's going to be somebody who feels that way about you. And I have a folder full of screenshots on my phone. So if someone says something nice, like even if it's just like a friend saying something nice to me, I will screenshot it. And if it's stuff about my books and my work, somebody comments on something that I posted on Blue Sky and goes, wow, I really loved your screenshot. And so I have that folder. And so on those days when it's so hard, I can just pull that up and go, okay, these reactions are to me and to what I've done. And I have those, and those will not go away. So allow yourself to find your own way, and allow yourself to believe that you've done something. That's been the hardest. That's been where I've been in the last little while, partially because of aging and the seasons changing, life upheavals. What have I done? What am I? What? And I've got friends who sort of go, smack me upside the head and help me see again. And I see it in bits and pieces, and I need to find that again consistently. But, like I said, try other things, try new things, try new ways. Find people that you can do it with, because you can all sort of share in your, that's great. You did, you check in with each other and can keep pushing forward, because it's tough. It is a tough thing to do. Creating anything in this world is a really hard thing to do. And I always try to say, try to be in love with what you're doing. Be in love with creating characters and creating worlds and creating stories and moving people along and figuring out how it all goes together, because you're probably not going to make a lot. Probably, you're not going to be super famous. There's not a lot of positive reinforcement sometimes. So if you've got the love of the action, got the love of the craft, if just sitting down and writing something, putting some words together and going, ooh, yeah, I like how they did that. I think that maybe doesn't leave you, and that can hold you up when it doesn't feel like the world is supporting you or giving back. It can be just something that you love to do, and that's a good foundation to build on, I think.
Yeah, it's so important to love the work itself and to not get too focused on the end product and the theoretical, maybe potential accolades or sales, because the reality is for a lot of us, those things are going to A, take a very long time, or B, never happen. But if we just love our work, and even knowing that, there's 5 other people that love our work too, like that's incredible. And if we can just really hold tight to those feelings, it goes a long way toward helping us stay on track. All right. So we don't appear to have any audience questions. That's okay. This next question is a biggie. It's something we've already sort of touched on, but I wanted to really get specific about this, which is, there's a huge wave of censorship happening right now, from issues with payment processors censoring things or bullying, companies like Steam and Itch into censoring things, to this huge outbreak of laws trying to dictate what is on the internet and who can access what is on the internet. And I think, as we are discussing, writing these stories of queerness, especially in this time, I think it's important to address how these things have the potential to impact us, and how we can stay focused on writing authentic stories despite it, and publishing authentic stories despite all of that, and encouraging each other to keep going. So I'm going to start with Jordan this time, if you have any thoughts on like how we can respond to the censorship pressures, and both internally and externally.
Well, they're not only going after queer and trans and minority voices anymore. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel got kicked off the air, and so did Stephen Colbert. The in the United States, the head of the FCC is playing by the Project 2025 handbook. So the anyway the one of the things I do is I try to keep informed. I read Project 2025 last year over the course of the entire year, so I have a pretty good idea of what is going to happen. So I moved to an AI-free OS for my computer. I use an AI-free word processor, and I'm not giving that information on either of those informations on YouTube. But I use an AI-free OS and an AI-free word processor, so that none of that can be spidered or what have you. Basically, I am fine. I've sold stories and books and have a couple of accolades. I am fine just writing my characters, because as Stephen said this thing that really resonated with me, about how you just have to love what you're doing for the sake of what you're doing. And I know when a long form, a book or a novella is working, because I will open up the document and be like, oh, my best friends are here, right? Because I'm just like that. Like a short story doesn't do that, because it's short. It's like 4,000, 5,000 words, and it doesn't get that with me. But when I've got like 18,000 words and I know it's got to keep going, I open up and like, my best friends are here. And if I can just keep on doing that, I can share it with my friends. And this is something that I have had to tell myself, which did hurt a little bit. But then I was like, but what is the point of writing? It's not to get published. It's not to get accolades. It's not to get this. It's not to get that. The point of writing is, 1, to write, but 2, to be read. To have someone read your work and maybe say, I freaking loved this. So if I write so if I write this and every time I open up the document and I say, my best friends are here, and then I share it with my best friends and they like it, and then that is the point of what I'm doing. in this age of super censorship, if I can do this until the age of super censorship goes away, because no battle can be won with hopelessness. We all have to have hope that battle is won. And we all have to keep on doing the things that bring us hope. And one of my things that brings me hope is writing, among other things. So I have to keep doing the things that bring me hope, and that is writing in this. So I have done some OPSEC things. And in doing that, I'm going to keep on writing my best friends in my little document because I have to, because that is one of the things that keeps hope alive for me.
Well said. Kara?
Yeah, and like I also want to like touch upon that like, loving what you do, because that is, you know, when all else fails, that does help push you along, right? And especially with the entire thing that society is throwing at us right now that we're talking about here, I even if, the worst comes to worst, I just love these girls. Like, they're some of my favorite people, even though they only exist in my head and on the page, And I just like every time I open the document, I'm like, oh, I get to spend time with them. And like, they took on a life of their own after a while, and like just yeah, I feel more like a director than like the creator. Like they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and I'm just moving the camera around, right? So, um, and as far as like the censorship stuff goes and everything, like like Jordan said, being informed is very important, and just knowing, like, being informed not to be like scared, but to be prepared, like to just to know the kinds of things these people want to do, and be able to formulate strategies to either oppose it, fight against it, or work around it, or whatever, right? And as part of that, like I have like two pillars of this, because getting my work out there is important to me, and I try to be like I try to be everywhere as much as I can. Like, the book is available in like a lot of places, so that if one of them takes a turn south or whatever, I can at least have alternatives that I can direct people towards. And uh, as part of that, I always try to make sure that one of the places is something I own or have like a lot of direct control over. And like, a website that is mine, that I code by hand, that I administer myself, that has stuff on it that I can, if it gets to the point where like the web host is shutting off, then we're all in trouble, right? So like, at least I have something that I have some direct control over, that's not dependent upon Amazon or Stripe or whatever, right? As much. And having that balance of like some amount of control and some amount of omnipresence, so there's always an option, is important. And also, just like, for me, I'm in a position right now where, like, this sort of thing has not come for me yet, and it's mainly because like I don't write stuff. The stuff that I write is not sexually explicit. It's not that sort of thing. But I know that that doesn't really matter in the end. That they want to define people like me as explicit, right? So I have been very fortunate to have a position where I have a lot of followers and like some kind of platform. So like, I've been trying to be very mindful of like using that position to share resources for fighting against these payment processors. I follow journalists who cover a lot of that stuff and share their work and share the work of the groups that encourage people to call and write in about this sort of thing. And I try also to be mindful of like sharing like the people who are directly affected by it right now, the people who write more explicit stuff, and the people who write stuff that is getting hit by this sort of thing. Like, I want to make sure that like people know, like, even though I don't make that, I'm not, I support the people who do, and I want them to have the same chances to succeed that I do. So I try to share their stuff and share, when they talk about the problems they're facing and about the challenges they're going through, I want to get that word out for people. And so that's, been because it's scary. Because in the end, it's going to be very hard, right? These people have a lot of power, and we are. I can speak for myself. I'm an underemployed, trans woman. I'm not. I have a finite amount of power I can push back with, right? But like, um, I think keeping that connection to communities and sharing resources is a way. It's a force multiplier, and so that's how we take what little leverage we might individually have and try to collectively, push back against it. And so just being able to use that platform to help get the word out is something that means a lot to me.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Like it has felt really good to be able to share those resources, and I've had a couple of posts go like blue sky viral, which is different than, Twitter viral was. But to see that those posts are still gaining steam, and you never know how many of the people will follow through because of those posts and make the calls or write the letters, but just to know that like I'm able to bring attention to it, and to bring attention to not just what's going on, but also the strategies that people have created, the tools that people have created to fight against what's going on. It's a really good feeling, and it helps me to sort of stay grounded in knowing that there is a fight that's going on, and it takes a long time to write a fucking book. So by the time that my book is finished, I don't know what's gonna be happening. Like I just sent off, or well, I'm about to send off for edits, my first book that does have like a really long explicit scene. And I'm like, there's part of me that's terrified, and there's part of me that, kind of want to just throw up my hand and not finish my edits. But like in the end, it's like it's gonna be, next spring or summer when this thing comes out, and who knows where we'll be by then. Who knows? It could be that I can only actually give this book to my friends and I can't distribute it, but there's always a chance that we can and will have won that fight by then. And even if it's not by then, someday we will win that fight. And someday I'll be able to share that book with the world. And that it's hard to keep that front of mind, but I really try to remind myself of that when it feels like, why am I doing this? And also, what's with my timing that I wrote my first book with an extended explicit scene now, and then everything blew up as I was finishing it. But that's just is that Murphy's Law or something else? I don't know. Sometimes timing just works out like that. Steven, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think yes, definitely be aware. Um, and circling back to what I was saying before, even if that thing that you make exists in a single printed copy on your desk, you still made it and it's still there. And when things change, and things always change, it's so easy to think that we are in this thing that is never going to stop, never going to end, never going to be different. You know, the cycles always happen. Cycles happen, things come, things go. It, you know, this too shall pass. It may pass like a kidney stone, but it will pass. And that maybe like make the thing. If for some reason you have to wait, maybe the platform that won't allow it is not the only option. Maybe there is something else. Maybe there is another way. Maybe there's something that you haven't thought about. Um, there's a the, I'm reminded. I think it's Camille Paglia basically said history is littered with the bones of empires that thought they would last forever. And I read a really good book recently about it was called Everything Must Go, which was about uh, apocalypse narratives and how they have changed and how they reflect the times they are written and the different things, the different ways we thought everything would end at different times in history. And that, like I said, things come, things go. I mean, you look back at, having lived through the advent of AIDS and its height. If you had told me that I would see an article saying basically that a geneticist has used CRISPR to basically eliminate it in cells, I wouldn't have thought that was possible. In the height of that time when it felt like everything was coming to an end, we couldn't conceive that we would be where we are now. So again, hope. You can't let go of the possibility that all of this is going to, the wheel's going to turn back around again in the future. The fight may be awful, and it may be difficult, and it may be painful, but if we keep resisting, keep fighting, keep writing, keep creating, sometimes you gotta just hold on for a while, and keep doing the thing until that wheel comes around again. So keep doing the stuff, hold on to it, surround yourself with people who encourage you and that you can encourage, and that you can, that metaphor about the choir, that some voices drop out while the rest continue to hold the note. That there'll be times when you may not be able to hold the note, but surround yourself with people around you who can, so that you can come back to it when you're ready. But yeah, sorry, I think I'm just saying the same thing over and over again about 3 times. But like, just keep going. When you're going through hell, keep going. So yeah, I'll stop now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's always an other side. And sometimes a really silly thing I think is even if the other side isn't in my lifetime, maybe some like future historian or archaeologist will find my stuff and think it's really interesting. Um, so we do have a couple audience questions now. The first one is from Talia, and it asks, "How do you balance being on social media with not wanting to be on the cesspool that most social media has become, especially with, the fact that we kind of have to promote on social media nowadays?" Stephen, we'll start with you this time.
I fully cop to the fact that I spend too much time on social media. I have a day job that has a lot of quiet time to it. And so sometimes it's a simple way to occupy my brain. Um, I try not to take it all too seriously. And I think one of the most important things I had was that realizing that different people use it different ways. That what I need it for or enjoy it for is not what someone else enjoys it for and needs it for. That somebody who basically, who is, I have a friend who is super on top of issues and is always reposting and is rageful about things that are justifiable to be rageful about. And I can count on that to sort of look at things. But there are also times that I go, oh, tired now. Next, tired now. But I know that he's there, and I know that I can go to that. It's hard, and it's easy to get swallowed up by the anger. Again, what's a platform that works for you? What is a platform that gives it something to you? And what do you share on it? My blue sky now is mostly I post a picture every day. I'll be random things like, oh, I watched this cool YouTube video here. I'm going to share it with you. Or here's this song that I really, and it scrolls by like nobody responds. No, that's fine because I'm, they're things that matter to me and they may resonate with someone else, and that's great. But they may not. Um, I sort of would kind of like to get off of Meta because I read the book and oh my God, that place is awful. Uh, but I have people that aren't here that are important to me, and that's the thing that they use. So I'm kind of, eh, and I try to understand and not, be careful what I share there. Um, but it has to be what is it giving you and what is it costing you at the same time are the two important things that you need to be aware of. And I using it to market. I'm sorry, I'm old and I'm tired, and it's just like I have a friend who she's got the hustle down pat, and I just look at it and think, I maybe I'll just have a cookie. You know, it just it, and I accept that the fact that I am not good at that and I don't have the intense will and drive to do that will limit the reach that I have. And it's just okay, what would it give me versus what would it cost me? And doing that sort of balance. But again, and also accepting that it is not real life. That there is a world out there. I have people that I spend time with that I can talk to over brunch, that I can, you know, tell how I feel and go, hey, I'm having a really bad day. What? And there are times when social media has helped me with that. Depending on the platform, I can go, I'm having a really bad day. Please say something nice to me. And my friends will go, okay, and they'll jump right in, and that's important. So I've learned which platform I will get that on in the amount that I needed at that moment, and I try not to do that often. But when I need it, it's there. Uh, but yeah, it's just
Absolutely.
don't take it too seriously. And again, the what'll it give you versus what'll it cost you?
Yeah. I knew that Blue Sky was becoming a serious alternative to Twitter when I could say I'm having a bad day, please send pet pics and immediately get like ten pictures of cats and dogs. Jordan, your thoughts?
I use social media. I Again, in my class on burnout that I taught, I basically said choose the platform that you want to be on the most, no judgment, and use that one the most for what you want to use it for. I don't like Stephen King's on writing a lot. As he hammers down the point of write every day, which to me seems like an ableist sort of thing because many disabled people can't write every day. But whatever, you can take it. But just like all advice, you can cherry pick the things that are good. You can cherry pick the things that are bad. And one of the things that I took out of there was this on writing was written a long, long time ago. And he said that when you're blogging, basically choose 4 things that you're going to blog about with like 1 or 2 things that you pepper in there occasionally. And so I basically choose when I'm putting posts on my social media, which is Blue Sky, which I mentioned, I choose 4 things that I mainly post about. Reposts don't count. So that I mainly post about with 1 or 2 things that I pepper in there occasionally. So basically, and this is what is considered your brand as an author, right? So then you're not giving away too much rando information. And every time before I post, I'll be like, I'll be like, does anyone need to actually know this about me? No. Okay, put the phone down. So like so and like and I have this rule of like, because I'm a queer elder, I grew up mostly like, the internet social media did not exist until this thing called Friendster. Um right, Stephen knows it. So Friendster was the first social media that existed. Um anyway, that I recall. And basically, and I don't, and so like nobody knew my thoughts on things until that. And then they didn't really need to because, I mostly like my thoughts were known to like my 12 or 13 friends, or like my 3 friends when I was out at the burger place and the smoking section, which existed, right? And so like, and that was the social thing that I did. And so, but luckily, I have all these opinions about people needing to be perfect at 13 because they have to look great for their Instagram. And I think that's going to, as a former child therapist, I'm thinking this is going to have ripple effects throughout generations now. But that's my own thinking. But so whatever, because at 13 I did not have to look perfect for my Instagram, and I'm thinking these poor kids, right? So, but anyway, that's a totally different conversation. So the so my social media, basically I can go, that is an inside voice thing that I don't want to put on my social media. I can use my inside voice. I am just going to tell the dog this thing that I was going to put on Blue Sky. Nobody needs to hear this. And then I can use my outside voice as one of my 4 things or 2 extra things that nobody really cares about. Most of the things that nobody really cares about are, hey, I found this cool metal song. Does anyone want to see the video? And then like 3 people like it, except for the Gangnam Style cover by Fear Schwans, which everybody seemed to really like. That kind of went Blue Sky viral. Um, but I don't like a lot of the other social medias, for a lot of other reasons. I'm I might be on them, I might not, depending on whether I'm a ghost or not. So, but a long time ago, I did leave Facebook in 2019. And I did have a big feelings about it because I was like, I don't know whether I'll be able to connect with my friends or not. So I gave my friends 3 weeks notice that I was leaving. And I messaged all the people who are important to me and gave them my information. Here's where I'm going. Here's my website. Here's this. Did any of them respond to me? This big round number of 0 responded to me. So I felt confident that I could go because of all the 17 or 20 people that I responded saying, here's all my information, here's where you can find me. None of them responded to me. So I thought, these are not my actual friends. If they were my actual friends, if I'm giving them 3 weeks notice, they would know, they would follow me. So the most people that have kept up for me through Facebook do so through my newsletter, which is wild. So like, but social media is pick your 4th for branding, because as an author, I use it for branding. For personal, more like if you actually want to know the me, personal me, that I use on like siloed spaces like Discords and Slacks.
Awesome. Kara?
Yeah, so like social media for me is it's funny because like I've kind of left everything over the years that isn't the stuff I enjoy using, and that wound up basically just being Blue Sky and Tumblr. I haven't been on Facebook for a long time or Instagram or anything like that, and I have a Mastodon account just in case like everything else fails, but I primarily like you can't find me anywhere but Blue Sky and Tumblr. And the Tumblr is because I've been on Tumblr forever, and just when I became a writer, I just was like, well, what the hell? I'll just keep doing it. And Blue Sky is honestly the thing that like what success I've had is because of Blue Sky. I think just uh, posting good and meeting people really is kind of like the entire success story behind Magic Riot. But for me, like the way I kind of balance it, it's like Jordan said, I don't, I try not, I don't, I think my brand is more or less who I just am. Like I'm not like, there is more to me than what you see on Blue Sky, but like you said, I keep that for like Discord. I have a Discord channel for my closest friends, and I have a server for the fans who are on the Patreon, and that's kind of where you get a little bit more unfiltered me. But like for the most part, like if you know me on Blue Sky, you know me. I'm not particularly like a the brand is for me is pretty close to my actual personality. So like for me, the way I manage like how I deal with social media is that like I've been very careful about who I like when I follow people. Like I try to keep like my following timeline. You know, I don't follow a lot of like people who just pump a lot of depressing news into my world. Like I can like there's a lot of journalists and stuff like I can't follow because it's just like this is good to know, but I will check in with you manually if I need to. I don't need to see this every day. And so like for the most part, like my experience on social media, I'm very free and easy with the block button. I don't really have much of a problem with that. And I know there are many different opinions about block lists on Blue Sky, and I wanted to have I wanted my social media on there to be a place where I can feel safe to share and talk about what I do and not worry about the chuds coming for me. And so like I use several block lists that are I pick the ones that are like by people who are vetted, and I understand the risks are always that like they might turn out to have agendas that will put people on there for false positives or whatever like that. But for the most part, I have curated a set of ones that are pretty well regarded and generally pretty safe. And so like I for the most part don't see like the real awful stuff, like they just can't get to me through the block lists and the mute and everything. Like, and sometimes I just, even if I follow somebody, if they start sharing a lot of stuff, if it's someone I care about, but I'm just like, I can't see this right now. I need to put you on mute for a while, and it's fine. I still like you a lot, but like, I'll let you get through this. I can't see it right now. So like curating a kind of like space that feels reasonably safe and reasonably secure, while still also knowing that like there's things I keep off there. I don't share, right? So and I think maybe part of that is just from my experience being an old Tumblr person, because Tumblr has been the weirdest nightmare of a social media place for years and years and years, and has been through so many deaths and resurrections over the years that like we're all like nuclear cockroaches from over there. You can't get rid of Tumblr people. So I was battle hardened by by all of that, and so just knowing how to like curate a space that works for you. And also just I think the nice thing too is that like on Blue Sky my experience has been that like the persona that I put into the world, which like I said is pretty much me. I try to make it a pretty positive space, and I try to make it a place that if you're going to follow me, it's gonna be pretty good. Like I don't I've built up a lot of following on Blue Sky, and like I'm very cognizant of like I have like all these followers now, and I don't want to use that power for ill. Like I don't want to spread stuff that's going to get people depressed and scared and that sort of thing. And so like I try to make a place that if you're going to follow me, then the vibes are going to be good. And I think that like there will be exceptions, and it always is the case, but like I think curating a persona that is pretty cheerful and pretty good times here, not that there's no bummers, because I will share heavier stuff if I need to or whatever, right? But like just being a person who is I try to be a good presence in people's lives online, and I think that has had the feedback effect of making it so the people who follow me and interact with me on a regular basis are pretty cool. And so, like, I have been fortunate that my social media experience has not been terrible. Like, I've met a lot of really cool people that way. And, um, but also just knowing when you can step away and go into the real world and take a walk and know that it is all like, I can't say it's not entirely real life because I guess, we all know we are being run by the podcast administration now. But like, knowing that there is a lot more to life than your timeline helps a lot to keep you centered, I think. So,
Yeah. Uh, and I too am pretty much only on Blue Sky at this point. I have accounts in other places, um, but I don't really use them. I use Facebook Messenger because it's such an ingrained habit that like I've tried to get more of my friends to switch to texting, and it's hit or miss whether or not it works. Um, but I try to generally minimize how much time I spend looking at actual Facebook. The only thing I really use it for other than Messenger is like checking like local buy nothing groups, and a couple other like hyper local things that just don't exist elsewhere online. But I think really keeping my focus on Blue Sky has been great because Blue Sky's mute is great, but Blue Sky's block is way more powerful than the block function on a lot of other social media. So you can really just they call it the nuclear block. You can block someone way out of your orbit, and the mute and block buttons are very much your friends. Use them as liberally as you feel like because that is your space, and protect it. Something else that I do, and I'm able to do this because I have a pretty large at this point following that's pretty actively engaged, is sometimes I don't even look at my timeline. I just, live in my notifications. Like every night I do like a what are we comfort watching tonight post to like share what I'm watching and like find out what other people are watching, and like that's a really fun thing. And I'll just like sit in my notifications tab and just respond to things there and like have those conversations and ignore the timeline completely. I understand that that's, not something everyone's able to do. That's something I can do because I have this bigger, more engaged audience. But it's really nice to do that. And if you reach a point where you can do that, and even if it's just a small audience and you just have like five or six people who are actively who follow you, and you can, have those questions, uh, or those posts, or if someone else makes a post like that every day and you like manually go to that and skip over the timeline, that can be a great way to like still have that interaction. Because let's face it, as much as it may not be real life, for some of for some of us it is kind of real life, and for some of us, being out in the physical world is complicated for a variety of reasons. So yeah, sometimes that is your main way of socializing, and if you can manually go to a page where you'll find prompts or something to engage with, then you can get that engagement and kind of skip over all of the bullshit. All right, so we are at time. We do have a couple more questions from the audience. So this is where I ask, does everyone want to wrap up now, or do we want to go an extra, let's say, 15 minutes to quickly address the last couple of questions?
yeah, I can stick around for a little bit longer.
Jordan? All right, so the next question is from Maggie, and it's something we sort of vaguely talked about again, but what are your thoughts about getting involved locally during these times? But more specifically, how does that impact your author practice and business, and or how do you feel it may impact your author practice going forward? Stephen, we'll start with you this time.
I honestly don't know what to say. I mean, involvement locally is a good place to start. That it. I don't think it's ever a bad thing to become involved in whatever way you can. I don't know about I write the book, I give it to my publisher, and my publisher publishes it, and then they tell me how much is sold, and I go, and, and then I move on. But I don't know about, like I said, I'm bad at marketing, and I'm bad at at promoting myself. So even if I had a huge following to be worried about, I don't know that I would. I come from a long line of socialist lefties who, work on doing the thing that's right, whether it's got a cost or not. So if I had to choose, then I could publish my writing on my website and give it away for free, but I'd be doing a thing. And again, it's what I said before. What does it give you versus what does it cost you? That's always what you have to look at it. And no one's ever going to be able to tell you what that particular balance is going to be for you. I mean, I like to think that I would say, I'm not worried about it. Let's go do the thing. Um, I don't know. Like I said, there's not a
Fair
lot to
enough.
worry about, right? Not a lot to worry about right at the moment. So it's not a big deal.
Fair enough. Jordan?
All right, getting involved locally. Create the community you want to see in the world. Dovetailing off that, do not sign up for a protest with your legal name. There is no need to sign up for a protest with your legal name. There's no need to RSVP to a protest. There's never been RSVPs for protests in the past. You don't need to RSVP to a protest, especially not with your legal name. Do not do that, please. Absolutely not. Also, be the solution to the problem within your means. If you cannot physically protest, if you cannot emotionally protest that day or ever, find another solution within your means to do things. The only way this will impact your author or practice or your brand or what have you is if you, within your means, have overextended yourself and you cannot write, you are injured, you are emotionally tapped for weeks. You are basically intellectually tapped for weeks. And that's what I have to say about that.
Makes sense. Kara?
Yeah, I kind of feel that too, like uh I'm not a tank or a DPS, I'm a support class. So like I Jordan talks about working within your means, and that's very much like a thing where I feel very strongly because like I would be useless on the front lines, but I can do what I can do to help people in the background or help them in different ways and stuff. And um, as far as like how that ties into like my author stuff and everything goes, like other than what Jordan said about like if you're injured or overtaxed, then yeah, that'll impact for sure. And like the one of the things that I've found too is, and I'm a little fortunate, I guess. I live in a city where there is a large leftist presence and community organizing and that sort of thing and community aid stuff. And um, as somebody who writes queer stories from a leftist perspective, I fit in, right? And so like something that I've has been beneficial for me emotionally, and also it ties into my other work, is that like we have queer bookstores, we have queer booksellers at other bookstores and stuff like that, and so being able to connect with people like that and help each other out and like get into the local like queer writing and literature community and stuff has absolutely helped. Like I got an email the other day. It was really cool, like from the local like queer bookstore here in town that was like, "Hey, I don't know what you did, but we can't keep your book on the shelves, so thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It's helping us out a lot, And it's like it's a little tiny store, and like, um, and yeah, like when I saw they were carrying it, I put a link on the website. You can go one click and get it from them if you want, because I want to support my local people, right? So um, like being able to make connections with people, like it really, I think that's even outside of like protests or whatever, just like knowing the people in your community who are working and doing things, and just the people who you can support and can support you, like even just like knowing a couple of like queer folks who work at like one of the bigger bookstores, and they, talk about, putting the book on a certain shelf, like a themed shelf or whatever, right? Like that helps me, but it helps, to also just like have a presence in the community that shows that there are queer authors that are out there doing stuff. And I think that that's beneficial for everyone who is in our kind of community. So like, yeah, I would be, it's like Jordan said, don't overtax yourself, don't go beyond your means, but finding the right people in your local area or whatever community you can find, that you can connect with, it can really help. And it can help, I don't mean that just from a sales perspective, just like a motivation perspective, and keeping a sense of perspective on like how do you hold on to hope in these times. There's people in your community doing it right now too. So, connecting locally with people like that, I think could be really beneficial.
Absolutely. And I think that also, quite frankly, I know that I feel pretty confident saying that this is across the board true for the people in this panel. Quite frankly, if my involvement in local lefty politics is a turnoff for a reader, I probably don't want that reader near my work anyway. And
Exactly, yeah.
I feel more than confident that there are enough leftists and progressive folks that would be interested, that even if the entire, all the centrists and all the right wingers decide that they hate me and my work, I'm still confident that I could eventually build a pretty solid career just, speaking with and telling stories to and for other progressive folks. You know, the right wing may have overtaken a lot of media and may be very loud, but there are so many people who don't believe any of that crap and who will absolutely support you even more because you're doing this work. And I think we just got to keep our focus there. And our final audience question from Melanie ties again into community, although this isn't necessarily local community. It is, do you have suggestions on how to find writing communities or ways to connect with other queer authors to build communities? Jordan, we'll start with you this time.
Okay, so the way I've built community both online and offline is literally just making friends. Making friends and asking questions. So networking is making friends. That is literally how you do it. That is a not creepy way of how you do it. If you want to be creepy, you do the hey, right? But so like if you want to be like just like, if you want to actually network and actually be friends. So, and that is creating community. And you can either be the community builder or you can be the one in the community. Both is good. This is a porque no las dos thing. So. If you want to create community, you can do this on social media or you can do this in the world. Either way works. So to create community on social media, basically you find other writers, and if you vibe with them, the vibes are good, not rancid. You can say, hey, do you want to create a Discord? And then if you have enough people in Discord, it can be 4 or 5. And then you can create the sprints thing that we were just, I'm creating a callback like we did in comedy back in the day. We could do the sprints thing. And then next thing you know, you have 5,000 words written in a week because these 4 friends, writer friends that you've met on Blue Sky or Facebook or Instagram or wherever with totally positive, with totally good connecting vibes and everything, you've got created a community, and a community like that is only going to grow if you tend to it. In the world, the physical outside world, if you can do this, because Diana brought up are able to engage in the actual physical world. So if you can do that, you go to like book launches or you find your local literary area. Like we have an actual like literary institution here in town. So you can go there, you can find people there. If you go enough, you'll find people there. You can create community through that. And next thing you know, you have a writers group, like not only a critique group that's local, but a writers group that's local. And then you do the same thing. But you have to know within yourself whether you are the builder or the follower. And porque no las dos, both are good.
Well said. Kara?
Yeah, I basically can second everything that Jordan just said, and like, I'll add to that like, for me, like the way I found the people, like the writing community that I'm in on Blue Sky, which is really like what got me started, the fact that like I had all these other authors that knew me and we had become friends and stuff. It really is just a matter of, it's like Jordan said, it's making friends, right? And like, I think a lot of people in communities can tell when you're being insincere just to get clicks or whatever. And so like my thing with these sort of things is, to be like sincerely and enthusiastically fans of other people. Like uh, I've met so many amazing authors who have helped me and I help them because I think what they do is really cool, and like I like to talk about that and get the word out, and they like what I do and like to get the word out about it. And like I think that being genuine and sincere about it is a big part of it, because like if you're being hollow and being performative, I think people will see through that over time. And I think that that's how it's the whole thing with the real community is you want the people who actually want to be there and who actually want to be like a part of it. And it's like Jordan said, you can either be the person building it or the person participating, and they're both great. Um, so like the way I found my people is, we met through like Blue Sky, like follower pack or starter packs, and like uh the book sky hashtag stuff and everything, and just accruing these people who you vibe with over time. And it really is kind of also the same way you do it in real life too. Like you can find in your town or city, find the organizations and the groups that post on different places to get started. But like, you'll find as you start going to things, you'll meet the people who you actually connect with, and that spins out of that into like, however much you want it to be. Like you said, sometimes you're not the one building it, sometimes you're just participating, but that's still really cool and helpful. So um, yeah, I think my key to finding the writing community for me, on top of all that, was just like I said, just be genuine and be sincere and you know, be there for people. And you know, don't be always looking for what's going to help you in your advantage. Like just be be there because you want to be there and because you like the people. So
Awesome. Stephen?
Yeah, I found it's usually very organic. Um, the critique group I was in all those years ago was one of the members was a close friend of mine, and we met up at a con, and then it was like, hey, we do this thing. Do you want to be part of the thing? And I was like, hey, sure, that sounds like a good thing. I'll be a part of the thing. And so I was. And then years later, uh, hanging out at Glad Day and knowing people there led to being in the Naked Heart Festival, which being on a panel, and the four other people that I was on that panel with, I'm still super close to in terms of writing. Uh, and one of those people was like, hey, you should be part of CanCon. Like, hey, that sounds cool. And so he applied and got to do a panel and met the people, and then became a part of that sort of extended constellation. And one of those people from the panel, what is the person who organized this writing group, and so got to be part of the writing group. And then a guy that I met at CanCon last year, I was like, hey, we do this writing group. Do you want to come be part of the? Yeah, that sounds great. So we came to. So all of those things of just being open, being connected, and looking at those opportunities and being ready to both say yes and to ask, to offer that to people. Someone offered it to you when the time is right and you feel that that person would benefit as well, offer it to them. So you form this kind of chain of, hey, we do a thing. Do you want to be part of the thing? Because the thing is kind of cool, and those sort of just, hey, what about those things can be incredibly valuable because, like Kara said, they're not fake. They're sincere. They're real. You're connected to the person. They're connected to a thing, and that web can grow very easily if you let it, and if you help it to grow as well.
Absolutely. That's all great advice. And of course, I can't let this question go by without taking the opportunity to plug the Weeknight Writers community programs. So we do a few different things. The original Weeknight Writers thing is the chat that I run on Blue Sky every Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. EST at the hashtag Weeknight Writers. If you follow our account, which I've just posted, you'll see it come up on Thursdays. We send out, a few questions. A lot of the time, it's just like a check in to see how folks are doing and where they're at in their creative work. But starting next month, we'll be launching into First Draft Fall. So we'll have themed chats around planning your First Draft Fall project so that you can be ready to write a first draft in November. We have a lot of fun over there. The community is so engaged that I had to expand the chat from 1 hour to 2 hours. And yeah, just there are some really phenomenal people in that group that come back week after week and have made it a really special experience that I look forward to every week. And that is a totally free way to participate. I also will be posting next month, over the next couple of months, a lot of prompts in the mornings for First Draft Fall. And also, like in a regular week, I do some good morning posts, and some of them have prompts as well, just sort of checking in with where folks are at and what they're working on. So that's one way to participate in community with Weeknight Writers. And then we also have our sustaining membership program, which does include a pro Discord, which is a paid members only Discord where we have nightly accountability check-ins and monthly socials and weekly virtual write-ins and a whole ton of stuff. And so that is a really great way to be involved in community. We've got so many incredible people in our group, and I'm so honored every day to be able to be in community with this group and to have fostered such a supportive space and to know that to know that it's helped these writers so much, and some of them have been in the community for years and I've got to see their work evolve, and it's amazing. I highly hope that you will join us, and I do also encourage you to follow the other advice provided and to seek out other communities and build your own, because there's nothing more amazing than being in a group of creative people and knowing you're not all working on the same thing, but you're also all kind of working on the same thing. We are all in it together, and that is a lovely feeling. All right. On that note, it is time to wrap up. So I'm just gonna go around and have each of you say your name, pronouns, title of your most recent book, and where folks can find you. And we will start with Kara.
Yes, so I'm Cara Buchanan, she, her, and my most recent book that is out is Magica Riot, and its sequel, Magica Riot Full Bloom, is about to be out pretty soon. So that's just my life, making these magical girl stories. And you can find me on Blue Sky at bsky.app/profile/magicariot.com, and my website's magicariot.com. So I'm always hanging out somewhere. So just come follow me and hang out.
Awesome. Stephen?
Stephen Graham King, he, they. My latest book was The Infinite Heist, which is book 5 in my Maverick Heart cycle. Um, you can find me Stephen Graham King. It's distinctive enough that, and it is now my handle on everything, and it's also my website. Where, if you're interested, you can sign up for a photo a day. I email out one photo every morning with a little director's commentary, which is special only to people who sign up. It is totally free, and the sign up is on my website if anybody's interested in seeing what's keeping me alive these days.
Awesome. And Jordan.
Hi, my name is Jordan Corella. I'm on Blue Sky at notthat.com because I can't figure out how to make my website host let me do that. So this has been a struggle for about 4 months. Anyway, but you can, it's Corellian, like if it was Orwellian, but my last name. This was a meme from The Bad Place like 5 or 6 years ago. Anyway, so it's Corellian at bluesky.social. My pronouns are he, him. I am not a they. I do not have they energy, even though I have a they look. But anyway, so my latest book is The Death of Mountains. It's got a mountain with a skull and teeth on it. It is blue. It is out from Lethe Press. And it is very tiny, but it is like a very dense cupcake of basically feelings. But that is all I have to say.
A very dense cupcake of basically feelings. That is the greatest pitch I've ever heard. Um, all right, and I'm your host, Diana Gunn. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the founder of Weeknight Writers. This panel was hosted by the Weeknight Writers Group, a community initiative dedicated to providing affordable and accessible support for fiction writers. To learn more about Weeknight Writers, including upcoming programs, go to weeknightwriters.com or check out our sustaining membership program at Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/weeknightwriters, where you can also sign up for our sustaining membership program to access cool things like our Weeknight Writers Pro Discord community with nightly writing check-ins, weekly writing sessions, monthly socials, and much, much more. This event was also hosted in partnership with Renaissance Press, a small Canadian publisher dedicated to uplifting marginalized voices. You can find out more about Renaissance Press at presses.renaissancepress.ca.